You ready to go over there, Kobe and Brandon? Okay. You give us the thumbs up. Let us know. Yeah, we can do that. You able to hear me now, Kobe? Miles is here next to me.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
We got Miles on the guitar. Jeff on the bass.
I'm honored. I feel honored. Tell us a story because it's a little bit.
They want to test. Make sure they can pick you up, Jeff.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Cool.
It's like everybody's got headphones in and just like heads down on their screens. Like, I don't know.
We'll see how much fun we're having.
Hey guys, we're starting the presentation soon. Come on up if you're interested. We're talking about mobile app development.
Bump, bump, bump. All good to go, Kobe? Cool? All right, thank you. All right. Well, jumping in going, so thank you everybody for coming out. Welcome to July's edition of the In Time Tech Talks. We had a great opportunity to be out here a couple months ago and shared about design thinking. And we're trying up a little bit different format here, a little bit later in the afternoon, and definitely appreciate you guys coming out. Really today, I brought along two technologists along with me. We wanted to go a little bit, put on the geeky hat just a little bit today. And we wanted to spend some time and talk about mobile app development. And really today, what we want to touch base on is how to get started in that space. So as we go through today, definitely want to share just a little bit, like things to think about, whether you're starting up a business and leading from that side, whether you're looking at technology as a career, or if you are a technologist and maybe you've never done mobile applications before, we have a little bit across the board to provide some of those insights. So sit back, enjoy, definitely grab some food and snacks over there, and for the next 45 minutes or so, Miles, Jeff, and I are going to take you guys through some things. So we are all from In Time Tech, so we're a local company here in town, software services provider. And so definitely if you ever have needs or anything, we've got a technology team here and across the globe. And we just love to show up and make a difference with whatever technology needs you have. One of those being mobile applications. So we'll start off here just doing some introductions. To my right is Miles Wilson. So Miles is really the star of the show today from the technology side. And in addition to being just a great human being, Miles leads up our mobile development team here for our US team. And he's really one that goes out, works with a lot of our partners, and works with our team in India on our mobile applications, and has spent a lot of time in that realm. And Miles has spent now 2.5 years with us, and probably about 2 years in that mobile space, creating all sorts of applications and working with a number of different partners. On my left is Jeff Trent, and Jeff is one of our...
You're our right.
Exactly. I don't know, is that stage left? I don't know how that works out.
You're at the,
so,
you're at
yep.
the right.
There you go. So, and Jeff is one of our software architects and has been with In Time Tech here for almost 2.5 years now. And these are guys that I lean on all the time, every day, starting up a new project, working with new partners. And Jeff and Miles work closely together, and they're really coming along and building technologists on our team. And they are just as excited as I am to get out and share a little bit about what we do. My name is Cody Urban, and I lead up the technology team here from our US operations for In Time Tech. I've been in technology now for almost 25 years here in the Valley, and working with In Time Tech for about the past 6 years. And I'm just excited to have these opportunities to come out and share a little bit about what we do, and just to give back a little bit and provide some insights. So with that, we're gonna jump right in here today. And so, we wanna start off and just share a little bit of insight about why mobile applications. We all probably have seen them, used them, but what's a little bit of the background, and why are they important in a business's technology landscape and the portfolio, and where are they really going? And so just kind of looking at things, if you go back in time, here almost, 15, 16 years ago, there were 122 million mobile devices sold. A lot of those had very rudimentary support for certain applications that were really built by the vendors themselves. If you guys remember the Nokia phones, you could get like a version of Snake on there. You had like a, yep.
That was
You,
like
I remember that.
Wasn't that like the BlackBerry era also?
yes, BlackBerry was really one of those first companies that came along and started to create this platform. And right around 2007, there's a company down in Cupertino that came out with a device that kind of revolutionized and really accelerated things.
A
So,
little company.
yeah, just
Fruit
this.
company.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, the company, what are they, or Apple, I believe is their name. So, you know, the first iPhone came out in 2007. Interestingly, at that time, their plan was really you would build web applications and you'd just display those on the phone and they would build a few unique apps. That transitioned very quickly. They listened to some feedback, and at about 6 months after the introduction, they had an SDK out, and as they say, the rest is history. But that really led us to where we're at today. In 2023, it's projected that there'll be 1.34 billion mobile devices sold, and in 2023, right now, there's 6.84 billion devices worldwide in use. So if you step back and think about that, why mobile applications? There's just a little bit of market share out there. You have this opportunity to connect with people. Exactly. So really just that ubiquity of those devices out there. When I started my career back in 2000 as a technologist, we sat down, we wrote desktop applications. I worked on printer drivers. I worked with, you know, mobile web. I didn't touch that for almost 15 years into my career. That has kind of shifted, and definitely we're in this web and mobile first experience is where things are at today. The other thing that's out there, why you should think about it, if you have a business or if you're getting into technology, learning mobile technologies, if you think about it, the first device that, you know, whether you're Gen Z, you know, Jeff, you have a couple young kids, my guess is their first, well, your kids may be a little different, but that's kind of a unique scenario, but their first device might be a tablet or a mobile phone of some sort. So kids are, you know, my kids, their first computing devices, 3, 4, they were taking my phone, they were taking the tablet and doing things with that. But really with these mobile applications, you have this opportunity where people have these devices right with you all the time, every day, anywhere. And you've got a unique opportunity to really connect those people with whatever product you have. And so you can do that in a very meaningful way and a really customized experience. Also with these devices, we've gone from general purpose phones to really this smart device. It's a computing device in your pocket. And whether it's Google and the Android platform and Samsung, whether it's Apple and the iOS platform, they are always coming along with, you know, with hardware features that can really make a difference. So you think about things like Face ID, you know, biometric, you know, like Touch ID from the Apple side. You look at how ubiquitous photos are now. Like everybody, you know, you can capture these moments in time because you have a device right there with you all the time. And so you've got this platform that provides unique ways for you to seamlessly accomplish those tasks that make a difference and that are important to people. Connecting with people, being able to get out there, you can do that with mobile applications and your mobile device. So just as you think about why mobile applications, why might I want one, just kind of step back and think about what's that one application on your device that you can't live without. And you know, just think about that for me.
There's more than one.
I'm sure. And Teams is one of those, I'm sure, right, Michelle?
I'm speechless.
Inside joke, I know. So
One of my thoughts is we're such a close group, maybe understanding why are you guys here? What do you guys want to learn about when it comes to mobile applications?
yeah, that would be wonderful.
You guys have these guys all to yourself. It is pretty nice.
Yeah, we love that. So, yeah, Shane, jump right in.
Like what I'd be interested in, like learning, I guess. I mean, I'm interested in this whole presentation here, like just intro to software development because I'm just getting into software design myself. So I'm just designing stuff on like Canva, and I mean, I build websites on a multitude of different web builders and all that kind of stuff. And I know HTML, CSS, basic stuff. I don't know coding for writing apps, but since my company that I work for is investing in this software, I figured, you know, I'm the only really tech guy there, so I figured it would be good to know this and get an idea of how to start and, you know, start laying down some ideas and get the ball rolling, really. Because it's only a smaller company, it's only like 15 people, and it's basically all writers, and I'm like the tech guy, so that works.
Perfect. I
That's
think we've got
awesome.
a couple things that'll really hit home there for you, Shane, and kind of cover like types of applications and some things to think about, what technologies may be there. And then as Miles goes through, kind of talks about that getting started, it'll give you some pointer kind of in that technology direction. Things that are there, so awesome. Matt.
Yeah, so background in product marketing, and I was offered the job to be the first ever marketing director in sort of a niche kind of dating site, and they're archaic. They only rolled out their app. It was web only up until I think about 2 years ago. I was like, why are they not rolling out an app? Like it's a dating app. Interviewing with one of the founders, he talked about being paranoid about it. You know, like, oh, I'm worried about that something's going to come along and crush us. And I was thinking, like, this is such a horrible product and experience. Like, I turned the job down because I thought, you really need a product manager. Then I started thinking, like, well, maybe I can actually create an app that will just completely blow them away because it's such a bad experience, and everybody I know that uses it hates it. And yeah, anyway, I just saw this in my email. It's like, I may actually learn some things to help me decide if I actually want to pursue this, because I've thought about it for a long time.
Awesome. I think some of those things, and Miles, as you share a little bit, I think that you may cover some of that, but there's ways in mobile application space to start quickly and get something out there, start getting some of that feedback, and we can touch base on that a little bit. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I have no idea what I'm doing now. I came in last week.
None of us do.
Yeah, no idea where I am. No, I came in last week just because I've heard about this, about Trailhead as this just great place where entrepreneurs kind of, I don't know, probably congregate a little bit. And so I'm just kind of in like a transitional time in my life where like I want to get into helping, like actually I kind of want to like help different businesses with different aspects of things. So I was just kind of excited to check out like what is going on at all in this building.
Okay.
So
Perfect.
I have no feedback on anything yet. I'm trying to figure out what I'm following.
Is there anything you want to know about mobile applications? Anything?
I'm much more interested in like, I want to say like the people side of things, like recruiting and like communication stuff and leadership. So I have no idea. I don't even know what apps I care about. But I can give it a shot.
That's always important in life, no matter what application you're in.
Yeah.
So you're still in a good company.
First
you're
one
in
that
the
came to
right
mind was Google Maps, and then
There you go. Yep.
Yes.
I have the phone, so you know, everyone has mobile apps, right? So.
yeah, calendars.
So you're in the right place.
What?
You're in the right place.
What are you guys? What's your like baseline? Like what are you like selling or what?
Yeah.
Love this.
Yeah.
Is this good?
This is
okay.
perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
You're like the hybrid person.
Yeah, I am.
She's
I
our
am the right
plant.
person. What?
You're our plant.
Yeah, so we're all a part of the same team. We're a part of In Time Tech, which is a software services company. But more than anything, and what's your name?
Andrew?
Andrew, my name's Michelle. Nice to meet you, Andrew. And really it's a creation because we also, software is what we know, but we really want to make a difference. And we want to bring content that's relevant and meaningful for people in a way that's usable, right? So we're here, we're huge believers in what Trailhead is creating. It's an incredible hub that you guys have created and are a part of, and it facilitates so many good things in the community. So this is just our way of partnering with Trailhead and saying, here's what we know, here's what we can maybe contribute to the conversation for people that are interested. And
Wait, so are you a part of this? Are you guys? Okay, so you guys are all a part of this company.
Yes, we are.
Why are you three up there speaking between
I am not a technologist, but you don't want me teaching about mobile apps. This is our mobile team.
And then are you guys also involved in that?
Yeah, we're the Trailhead team. So we're partnering with In Time Tech to put on this event.
That's right.
And you're in Time Tech.
In Time Tech.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And you're Andrew.
And you're Andrew.
And you're Andrew.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
We're going family style in this conversation.
I know. This is. I like this. This is
you
fun.
have like a microphone or anything? Like, damn, this is official.
It is.
Yeah, it's being recorded, so we got to make it look like this is something that we could put on social media later. No, it's good. No worries. We'll cut it. We have professionals to.
Kobe, that's where you come in. Anyway,
Awesome.
thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for coming out, Andrew, and just hanging out here. So we just love anybody, and yeah, whatever you get it, what anything that you see here that as you get out there and talk to people, get to know them. Yeah, like we're a couple people, we can point them in directions if they're looking for some help in a mobile application space. And we'll be back here. We plan to do these quite frequently and bringing different topics, technology based. Maybe some will be a little bit more business focused in that realm. We just want to come out here and get folks up on stage and have fun and share with the community, as Michelle was sharing. So.
Yeah, I think during the rest of the presentation, feel free to chime up with questions or whatever.
Yeah.
Small groups. So let's keep the conversation open.
Make it yours. So Matt, Andrew, Shane, like you guys are here. If there's something, we're here to make a difference and to share what we know and what works. So we prepared something as a team, obviously, but if you just are like, tell me, I have this one thing. That's what we're here for. And we'll be spontaneous. We're about 1,000 employees globally.
Oh, gotcha. Not a startup.
Not a startup.
Gotcha.
But we were a startup once.
I do it.
14 years ago.
How many in the U.S.?
We have about 150 in the U.S.
Gotcha.
And how many in Boise?
About 130.
Oh, so this is home.
This
Yes.
is home.
Oh, really?
This is home.
Yeah.
Wow.
So keep them coming. Keep the questions
And
coming.
what's the purpose of this?
Yeah. Like
I'm sure I'm going backwards, but
no, you're fine. Nope.
Your context
That's
is
perfect.
decisive, so you're setting great context.
Yeah. So yeah, really, we sat down with Trailhead and really wanted to look at like how do we partner together. So one of the ideas, among other things, is just putting on like some sort of like speaker series. And so what we came up with was in-time tech talks. So every month or two, coming in, bringing in some sort of topic along that realm. And so really for this one, our topic for today was really just to kind of bring mobile app development and like how to get started. So something that could touch base with somebody that has an entrepreneur, like you're an entrepreneur, you have an idea, but you just don't know what's out there. Kind of like what Matt was sharing a little bit. Like, hey, I see a need here and I just maybe don't know where to get started, or I see so many things out there. Where should I start? What would you recommend? A chance to share on some things on that. We may bring in at other times, maybe we go real deep in one specific technology. Maybe at some point, we'll come in here and we'll talk about generative AI, that sort of thing. Just kind of bringing some of those things out where these are things that we practice and do every day, so we can definitely have some expertise in those areas, but looking to share it and contribute and then just see what gets created from that. If somebody can take it, Shane, your story is great. Like if you can take a few things from here, like we want you to go back to your company, be successful, grow, maybe you become, a software engineer and a mobile app developer for the next 5 years. That would be.
You have these guys on speed dial. You could be like, hey, what am I help me? What
Yeah.
are we doing here?
That is totally what we're up to here. So just a way to come out and share and then get to meet people. So we brought food and beer to help open up conversations and things like that, and that's what we're out here for, Andrew.
That's cool.
So yeah,
Great question.
and yeah, love it. All right,
Thanks for the detour, team.
you got it. This is every day. So wonderful to have Michelle along the journey. So
Yeah, does she just like go out and recruit for everybody for everything?
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of like your
it,
role in life.
it's almost like you're in business development.
I am. Yeah.
There we go. So, perfect. Just in the interest of time, I'm gonna skip over this one and just jump into some things. One of the things that we wanna talk about today, I think this jumps in, Matt, a little bit what you're looking for. One of the areas we wanna talk about, there's different types of mobile applications out there. So I'm not talking like an Android app or an iOS app. But from the development standpoint, when we sit down to develop an application, we're going to dive in here just a little bit and share. You can create what's called a native application, where you're using things that like either Apple or Google has really built and is very tightly coupled to the platform. But then there's some other tooling out there that lets you, say, write an application, like write it once and then deploy it on a Google, on an Android device, on an iOS device. that sort of thing. And then we also have this class that are hybrid applications where you can write it and it runs on the web, it runs on your device. So we want to go through and share a little bit on that. I think that's something that, Shane, as you're looking at some things, Matt, as you're looking at things, there's different choice points along the way here. And we'll take you through. Jeff will share a little bit more on that. But just this one kind of gives like some things, like kind of these 5 areas like that you want to look at. So from like the speed side of things, are you looking for something that really, do you have a unique, like are you trying to do, some sort of application where the performance and that user interaction is important? Looking at that and answering some questions like that. You also want to look at cost. Like if you have a small budget and you want to be able to get out to a number of different users, you may choose one application type over another. Customization and in that space is as you look at using something that can be more cross-platform, you give up some control in that space for speed and that ability to go across platforms. And then security is always something to think about and different options. There's some knobs that you can turn in that space, and depending on, if you're building a financial application, you may choose one thing because security and that is an important need, whereas if you're building a game, that may not be as high on your priority list. So we'll go through here, and Jeff's going to talk a little bit more on some of these areas. So definitely, Shane, Matt, if you guys have questions in this area, definitely stop us, and we can dive in on some of these things. All right.
Thanks, Scotty. Shuffle around. Perfect.
You practice that.
Okay, let's see. I'm more of a stander, so I'll stay up here. But yeah, like Cody said, there's a few different types. There's the native, the cross-platform, and the hybrid, and there's different technology choices here on what can build those for you, and it really depends on your need specifically. So we're going to just dive in a little bit more specific, starting with native mobile applications. So this is really using, like Cody said, the tools designed by either Apple or Google for Android or iOS. There's a lot of great advantages for it. It's often faster. You have closer access to hardware features that might not be available yet for the other types of applications we're talking about. So if you want to use a new feature on the latest iPhone or latest Android, then you're gonna have to probably use the native application. There's lots of other great things with that, but the drawback is if you're wanting to target iOS, Android, web, etc., you're gonna have to build 2 or 3 different things. So it can double or triple the amount of development that you have to do if you're wanting to target multiple platforms.
Yeah, to translation on that is more time, more money.
Exactly. So really it's going to come down to a business decision of, especially when your idea, the first to market, matters so much, then native might be off the table for that. But you might have an idea where time to market, it might be really unique, and it might not matter as much, and you really need to nail that performance or another piece of it where you can spend some more time, develop in native, and have a really solid user experience. So if you think about like drawing applications, what's the big one? Procreate. Like if you're doing an application like that, native is probably the way that you want to go. And like another example here would be like Google Maps, where you might need close access to like the GPS, accelerometer, things like that, closer to the hardware of the device. That it might be a little bit more difficult in other ways. So we're gonna go.
Can I jump in, Jeff?
Sure, go ahead.
I think knowing that everyone here has a curiosity about how I would get started, maybe, and I'm learning a lot actually. One other consideration might be, where is your target audience and what are they using? So, Matt, if you want to build a particular app going, where are my users? Are they primarily using an Apple device? Are they primarily using Android? That might be a factor in deciding, do I go native or do something else?
Yeah, that's a good point, Michelle. One thing to look at in that space too, if you look at the metrics, in terms of monetization, like if you have to get something up and going and get revenue coming in, by far and away, the iOS platform is where you can generate that revenue. So you actually see a lot of startups, like they target iOS and a native application out of the gate, and they create a great experience there, and they may do that for 6 months, or they may do it for 2 years. and then they look to go to other platforms and to expand it out from there too.
So Shane, does your company have a mobile app?
Not yet, no. We're just developing software for it now, but it's not going to be a mobile app. The idea is that develop software first and then turn it into a mobile app. Like we're going to iterate and improve on the software itself and get our clients using it, and then then invest the time and money into the app. So yeah, we haven't started yet.
I bet you guys can talk about that too.
We will.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got just the
Miles
stuff
is
for that.
warming up.
Yeah.
See it.
Yeah, Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a little anecdote that kind of fits right into this. We are working with a company right now based out of Northern Idaho called Weedy Fit.
Yes.
And they, essentially what they've done is they've streamlined the respirator fit process. Something that is OSHA required all over the world. In the US is OSHA, other regulatory bodies are also requiring it across the world. But traditionally you have to go in and see a physician so that they could, or a specialist, so that they could fit the mask and tell you exactly which size to get. So A, you're protected, and B, you can't sue your company because you're breathing in paint fumes or what have you. They are in the later stage of their startup journey and actually have customers. I believe, right? They have customers?
They do?
Yep.
They do.
Yes.
So they've got customers, but they're starting to scale and they're starting to think about scaling. They're on iOS only, and during their last pitch presentation here, they got some pushback from the audience. Why are you only on iOS? You're cutting out 75% of the world. And the poor guy, he tried to explain to him, like, well, we're planning on moving to Android, so just listening to you kind of explain, like, startups go for iOS traditionally because they can monetize it quicker. And then once they develop a great experience in iOS, they transition to other platforms. So just kind of connecting the dots with, like, because I didn't know that. And so that makes sense why he chose to
Well,
start with
and
iOS.
also iOS is more in the U.S. and when I worked at Facebook, I worked at LinkedIn. You look where what regions revenue comes from. North America is always half at least of your global revenue. And so you start where it's your own country, it's your own language, it's the biggest market. There's a lot of reasons for iOS.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that point also. If you're targeting people outside of North America, then Android is often the better way to go. Go ahead, Andrew.
What percentage, I mean, it's probably a hard question to answer, but what percentage of USA do you think is iOS versus not?
I didn't grab the data on this, but I do believe like iOS market share in the US.
I think it's like the flip global. It's like 75-25.
Yeah, something along those
No
lines.
way.
It's definitely the majority in the U.S.
Yeah.
75 Apple?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Dang, those guys.
Yeah.
These are Apple people. I don't know if that's true as much. I think it's closer to 50-50, but if only someone could pull up the actual statistics. Yeah.
That's on it.
Yeah.
But revenue-wise, it's something I believe like revenue. Like I think globally is like 80% iOS.
Global
Something.
revenue.
Yeah.
Global revenue.
Yeah. So in terms from the application space, it is extremely.
iOS heavy.
Yep.
It might take me a while because I just switched to an iPhone this week after like 10 years.
Great choice.
Plus as an Android, so.
You're really feeding to the statistics here.
Yeah. You've converted.
Yeah.
I'm just barely getting through Safari right now. It's like, where's Chrome?
I
Yeah.
feel you there.
iOS led with 57% market share in the U.S.
Yeah,
So 57, like 42, if we're not going to go
60-40.
into decimals.
Yeah.
yeah, that checks out. There's a few more slides. I'll just briefly say that sometimes with like language choices, especially if you're hiring developers, it might change what choice you want to make. Like if we're talking about like iOS, it uses Swift, and there's a lot less Swift developers out there. It's really only for, Apple products. But as we talk about like, even Android using Kotlin or Java, that's used a lot more elsewhere in the industry, so it may be easier to hire developers or cheaper to hire developers for those languages.
Is there a reason why there's not a lot of developers for Swift? Is it like kind of a pain to learn?
No, I think it's about as easy as most others. It's a language made by Apple for Apple devices.
Yeah, you spend all the time learning it, and it's literally just for that one.
More
Right, exactly. You
proprietary.
learn Swift for iOS development, while you might learn Kotlin or Java for development elsewhere, and now you can apply it for like Android development. Andrew?
This question might be kind of strange too, but have you guys found statistics on as to like what type of apps? Because like when you ask what app do I value the most, I'm like, I don't think I probably know. Have you done statistics on like what type of apps people use the most? Like, you know, when you go into screen time and you see like what you've used, and sometimes you're like, whoa, I did not realize that. Do you know what kind of apps people use the most, are like probably the most valuable?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I will say anecdotally, I think most people probably use a few apps as most of their time, right? They're going to be on like Facebook or their social media, and that's going to take a huge chunk of their time. And then as you're thinking about like penetrating the market, you know, your app is going to likely only have a relatively small amount of screen time. It's hard to compete against the other apps on the phone. So to think about how to monetize the usage of your app, make it useful, to make mobile development make sense. And a lot of the time you'll see the mobile approach as a hybrid. You know, there's also going to be a website developed, and it's just one way to, you know, push this, you know, your product in, you know, another area.
What do you think are like the top 10 apps that people like need?
Do you want me to? Oh.
Need or
Wanna know the most
use?
popular?
Yeah, spit out some facts.
Oh,
I'm gonna
besides
share some
TikTok.
facts. So when you look at the top 20 apps, pretty much the first 10, all social media. And communication tools like WhatsApp. So you get WhatsApp, Facebook, Facebook Messenger, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. Then you start getting into more business function and operations. You get into Google Maps, you get into communication tools like Skype. I didn't even know that was still, seems old, but Skype is on there.
Terrible.
Email. And then you've also got music. Things like Spotify, Pandora, things like that. Google Meet, Google Drive. And then you've got a couple dating sites on there as well.
Really? Where do those sit? Is Bumble, Hinge, or
Towards the
Tinder?
bottom,
Tinder.
but they're there.
Text, is that under communication? Because I feel like I spend a lot of time texting.
Text is not listed
These
as
are
an
just
application.
the App Store ones.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
What do you guys specialize in, if that's even a relevant question?
That's a
Everything?
great question.
What
Yeah.
don't we specialize in?
Yeah, it'd be more, I would say ours would be, as we come along and work with businesses, it's really the application that gets their product and their service out there. So, for example, we've worked with St. Luke's and helped them develop their mobile application. So helping them go from like this web-first experience to a more native and intuitive experience with a customized mobile application. And in that, it's like helping people, you know, find your doctor, be able to pay your bill easier, things like that. And so it's really, as folks come to us with like their needs to get things out there. Another one was, you know, they're basically an e-commerce company, so it's their product. It's helping them kind of build a storefront for those products that makes it easier instead of like kind of that web experience. It creates this kind of experience where it's easier to search and find products, build up your cart, remember your previous orders, that sort of thing. So those are the types of apps that we see. I think the other one would be, we also work with some folks kind of in the public sector, that space. And so like a mobile experience that enables you to get in and fill out form data more easily on a mobile device, whether it's a tablet or a phone.
We did the DevOps application as well.
Yeah, some
For
of those.
registration, agenda sharing, things like
Yep, that's another class of apps.
What would, also, you just tell me to stop and then you can move on, but because I don't know how this all goes, but like, my question is like, what are your top 2 success stories and like, how did it change that business?
Yeah, oh, good question. I think,
that. For mobile applications specifically.
yeah, Miles.
Yeah,
St.
Miles.
Luke's is a big one.
Why don't we pin this question? I think that's a great thing that we talk about at the end of this discussion. Yeah. I think, we'll connect with you later and I think ask more questions. But I'm looking at the time and there's a few more slides I want to get through. I know, Miles, you have a few slides, so I'll kind of summarize some of these, especially since we kind of talked about some of the pros and cons as we look at like native. So this is more cross-platform. So really the main difference is instead of developing for iOS and Android, you can do both at the same time. And maybe even develop to desktop at the same time, if that's something that you're interested in. So you can save a lot of money there. The other major advantage is it might be using languages that are more ubiquitous. So like JavaScript is used for like web development, and the big one that we'll look at for React Native is also using JavaScript. So if you're looking to hire developers, once again, it'll probably be cheaper and easier to find developers that can use React Native. React Native is the choice from Meta, from Facebook. I'm guessing it's what their mobile app is using. And it's one of the larger and bigger cross-platform tools. So there's a lot of resources around it. And then quickly we'll go through some of the other big ones. There's Flutter. This is by Google. It uses kind of like iOS, a language that doesn't have much use besides this specific framework. It's called Dart. So once again, it might be harder to get developers for this, but at the same time, Dart is a language that's relatively easy to learn. So developers might be able to transition to Dart effectively. Once again, Flutter is Google's cross-platform tool. And then there's .NET MAUI. This is probably the least common. They had a similar tool called Xamarin. I think that is retired, but this is the one by Microsoft. It uses C# mainly. So once again, this has probably the smallest market share of the ones that we've shown so far, and a relatively small community behind it, but it is backed by Microsoft as a major player.
Yeah. And Maui itself is relatively new, so we definitely expect to see more of this, especially in the coming years, as Microsoft now has their full weight behind it.
Yeah, and the same is for Flutter actually as well, where it's really only come out in the last few years, and still it doesn't have wide adoption. But as you can see by this image on this slide, is you can kind of develop in one place and then push it out to different platforms. So you can build once, have an iOS, Android, and then even Mac OS and Windows. And then we'll talk about hybrid and also progressive web apps. These are really just web pages packaged as an app. So it's running a browser with the application behind it. And some big things use that, including like Instagram and Gmail. So just because it's not as native doesn't mean that it's not useful. It's very useful. And the major benefit still with this is you can develop in one place, and if most of your market share is using their phones or the website, then you can target almost everyone in one project. So there's a lot of great use there, and if you don't need to get too close to the hardware, it's a really fast way to get things to market. You can do this natively using a lot of JavaScript and HTML. Really it's just you're building a page on the browser and then packaging it in an app. One tool to do that is called Ionic. And once again, the really nice thing about this, the really powerful thing about this is it's really easy to find developers that can build for a JavaScript. If front-end mobile or front-end web, they can use Ionic to build an app for you. So it has really great use there. It's maintained by a free and open source community, so it doesn't have a big backer, big company behind it, but open source communities are often great and maintain projects well regardless. This little preview on how, once again, it kind of targets Android, iOS, or however you want to.
And thinking about things, Shane, like this is, as I think about where you guys are at, like that hybrid approach or even the cross-platform approach, that's definitely what I would recommend you guys look at. As you're building the website, whether you take what you have now and bundle it up into an app or look at building something, should be fairly straightforward, and then you can get it out there across Android, iOS, and out there, and then customize the specific areas that can make a difference for you.
So, yeah, it's definitely what we're going for. And I'm just trying to think how I want to phrase this question. Would you recommend, I mean, obviously it's not a great idea to learn on the fly and build something like this, like myself. I mean, you said it's pretty easy to find a developer to make something like this. I mean, is it like a no-code software, or is it JavaScript? Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's JavaScript, so you'll need some coding experience to do that. But you said you have HTML and CSS experience, so you might be able to, with some trial and error, get something up there.
Yeah.
But
like when you do hire developers to like minimize costs and stuff, I've kind of realized. I just talked to a software developer a couple weeks ago, and he was saying like map out the entire avatar journey, like literally write it down in that. Actually, is that true? That like if you write out literally every single step that somebody takes, you kind of find holes in the software.
Yeah, I think on that side it can be useful to kind of have that. Here's the path. I think where I would go, I guess. So was that kind of conversation like building the mobile application version, or was this for like building the website?
Building the website.
Building the website. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to do. Like really thinking about. You should definitely start. One of the things, like our UX UI design team and like going through the design thinking phase is really one of the things they talk about is identifying the personas. So I would even start a little bit higher level than that and think about who are those main users. Like if we're doing 2 or 3 things, okay, this user A in that group does this operation. User B would do this. Understanding what are the needs that they have and how can they do it efficiently, and then you can map out for each of them kind of what are the flows that you would have in that case, and then start building out from there. You can get to a point where like having a fully detailed flow, it could be something you could hand over to somebody and say, go build this for me. And at the same time, when you're building it, if you take an approach where let's build a little bit and then test it with users, and then figure out what worked, what didn't, and then adjust, that's almost something I recommend because you learn so much, and there's so many things that we assume that once people get in their hands that they're like, oh, yeah, we assumed the wrong thing. We learned something from that experience, and we could actually do a little better job. So that's where I would say maybe I wouldn't spend like 3 months trying to map out the entire journey. I would spend a week and identify 1 or 2 journeys, and then figure that out, implement that, and then start building from there.
Okay, cool.
So.
yeah, Shane, I think you brought it up. Like, I would recommend for the most part, start looking at this hybrid or progressive web app for what to build, and if you have specific use cases that others make sense, go there. The other one that I'd recommend is probably React Native. So start there. I think this is my recommendation is React Native or something like Ionic to build your app. And then look to see if you have a specific use case and why you might decide to go native or another technology.
Thanks.
One special mention here is using game engines. They're multi-platform, and especially if you're using you need 3D models, or you're building a game, that's another great thing to use. They often have powerful visual tools, so instead of having to code the elements, you can create them more visually. So there are some benefits with that. And then the drawback, of course, is they're usually not going to be as performant or going to have access to some of that closer to hardware features that devices have. And then a couple notes of what tools you'll want to have. If you're developing for iOS, you have to have a Mac computer. You have to use one to build for the device. And then there's some other IDEs and other software tools that you'll need for iOS and Android. Those are free and easily accessible. And then my recommendation would be to also have test devices, so have an Android phone and an iPhone that you can use to test the software on and actually play around with it. There are simulators that Miles will show off shortly that you can access and play around with on the computer, but you can't really replace having it in your hand. And yeah, I think that's my section, so go on, Miles.
All right, everyone.
Miles.
So I pre-recorded a demonstration of a sample mobile app, and initially I was going to walk through it live, but wanted to have the recording just in case. And in this scenario, we do need to use the recording because my computer just wouldn't work in this scenario. So preparation paid off. But yeah, this is showing an example of one of those cross-platform technologies, React Native. And so this is the idea of you have one code base and you could build for both iOS and Android. And it's my preferred platform for beginners if they have experience in another kind of JavaScript-based framework. And if you know HTML and CSS, some of this might even look familiar. That's a large component of building a cross-platform or a hybrid app. So, like I said, HTML or CSS, that's already like a huge advantage to, if you do want to become a developer, you have some of those fundamentals already under your belt, which I know you mentioned HTML, CSS. So. And there's kind of a walkthrough and then a more technical code deep dive. So I'll stop at the walkthrough, and then if we want to go through the actual code, we can, or we could skip it depending on what's interesting to you guys.
Hello, welcome to the technical demo of this sample application here. So on the left, I have iOS, and on the right, I have Android. And these two apps, these are built with a single code base, and that's using React Native with TypeScript. So we write code once, and then we're able to build for both platforms, which is excellent. And as you can see, just from the initial look here, that these two apps look a little bit different. That's just because when we use something like React Native, we will automatically build the elements that are native to those platforms from a single code base. Now let's walk through this application. It looks pretty familiar. It's just a list of contacts. We could scroll through here, and where these contacts come from, they're not actually being stored within the app. They're being retrieved from an external source, and that's it's just a random list of contacts. These aren't real people. So for demonstration purposes, let's just go through. Select Andre here, and we can see some more contact information. We could scroll back. iOS supports that swipe feature. We can also use the back button here. Now we can also search. We got Alvin. All right. And as you can see, this is actually a different list of contacts because these are just randomly generated every time. And Android handles things a little bit differently. You can see, first things first, that the top title bar looks different. And this is great because if we were to open an Android app, we expect it to look like an Android app. Same with iOS. So that's why React Native is excellent, because it'll create the respective UI elements for the correct platform. You can see the font is also different there. It's just the native font of Android devices. Now let's scroll through and look at this contact. As you can see, yeah, just some slight differences here between the UI. But this one looks very Android, this one looks very iOS. Now let's just refresh the application here. This is a feature of using the emulators here. As you can see, there's two different loaders which look appropriate for the platform. So yeah, pretty simple functionality. Next we'll walk through the code base.
So yeah, that's a fairly simple preview there of what it looks like to have a cross-platform development environment where I was just running that on my machine, and you have those two simulators side by side, so it's really easy. You could change something on the fly, save, and then that changes automatically there. I don't know if you guys have ever worked with something where you have to save it and rebuild, or maybe you're exporting a video and you have to wait minutes or maybe longer to see that change. So I love that part about this kind of development. You save and see the change instantly. And those differences I was illustrating with Android versus iOS, you can also customize it so it looks exactly the same on either device. But just out of the box, if you were to start coding and did very minimal customization, your experience would very much look like that, which I really enjoy. So yeah, any questions on that, or any interest in going into the code?
Code.
Yeah,
I wouldn't mind learning code for sure.
sweet.
So, welcome back. It's time for our code base walkthrough. So, like I said earlier, we're able to build for 2 different platforms, iOS and Android, using a single code base, which is React Native and TypeScript. So, you might have heard of React before, or JavaScript, or TypeScript, and wondering, what is it all about? And what's the difference between React and React Native? Well, I'm going to walk you through, and you might see that this looks pretty familiar to regular React, or even if you just have some HTML or CSS experience, you'll see that this isn't too different. So let's start with components. The idea of a component is we create something that's reusable. And that might be something small, like this avatar. Let's walk through that avatar. Okay, this might look a little crazy at first if you're not familiar with code. But as you can see, we have some clearly marked elements. This is a view, which is basically just a container. And inside that container, we have text. And as you can see, we have the initials here inside of the text. So if we look at our corresponding component, it's just a container that has text inside. Pretty straightforward. Now you might see styles here. So this is what gives our elements, which are basically a skeleton, like in a human body, kind of highlights the structure of how something should be formatted, whereas style is kind of like the exterior, or how should it actually look. So let's look at some of the styles for this. Now, if you're a millennial like me, your first experience with code might have been with MySpace, making your own theme or something like that. So this might look familiar to you. We have our CSS properties. The only difference is we don't necessarily have classes like we do with regular HTML and CSS. We just have these style objects. All right, so this is a single component. Now let's move on to a screen. The only difference between a screen and a component is really actually nothing. A screen is a component that contains other components. So this screen here, if we simplify this, you can see that it's a view, so a container, with a text search component, which is this, as well as activity indicator, which is our loader if we're refreshing the application or grabbing our list of users for the first time. And then a scroll view, which is a container that scrolls. And then we have our users being mapped to a pressable. So a pressable is just a button. It's something that you can press. The pressable which is this element here, contains our avatar, which is another component, and text, the first name and last name. So as you can see, that's pretty straightforward if you break it down one by one. Might be overwhelming at first if this is new to you, but if you walk through, you could see that it's pretty clear to read, and it looks pretty familiar to HTML or CSS.
All right, we basically get a little deeper on that, but for the interest of time,
Hello.
oh, there we go. I do have a QR code to all that code, so if you want to check it out and just poke around and get a little bit behind the scenes of what a code base looks like, then feel free to clone it down or, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look like anything too, extensive really. Seems pretty straightforward. I mean, not that I'm an expert in code, but like I did recognize some of it,
Yeah. Yeah, it's very approachable if you have any sort of like front end framework, so.
Yeah, Miles, what would you say, like, when you jumped into your first React Native project? Yeah, how long do you feel like it took you to kind of get up to speed to feel like you could sit down and kind of implement anything?
Pretty much immediately, so instead of using like a div, you just use something that's called a view. And the components or the elements are much more generalized, so you don't necessarily have H1, H2, H3, because for HTML, that's a semantic language, so it kind of gives meaning to what these things are supposed to be, whereas for React Native, these elements, you could do whatever you want with them. So text could be your header. It could also be your paragraph or any of those things.
CSS just to style it because it doesn't matter about the order of the headings and stuff for SEO.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no kind of search engine optimization really that happens behind that. And there are ways to associate it with a screen reader, so it is accessibility friendly too. All right, I want to jump into the app publication process because that is a pretty major component, and to not talk about it, I think would do an injustice, just because like my experience, I've learned so much, and if someone told me these things beforehand, I would have had a much smoother experience the first go around. Okay, so the first things you need if you want to go for iOS and Android, you need their respective developer accounts. So Google Play developer account or Apple developer account. The next step is you need to upload your app. And that sounds really simple, but it sometimes isn't. If the tool that you're using is dated, or maybe you're updating someone else's app and it's dated, eventually these technologies, they get deprecated and they're no longer supported. So say you try to upload your app and you'll get a message back from Google or Apple and say, hey, this is too old. Like, we won't even let you upload this. Like, there's no chance this will get on the store because we don't support, say, iOS 10 anymore. So that's important to clarify. Like, use newer and stable technologies when it comes to getting started, which if you're just now getting started, that won't be difficult to do, but if you're working on someone else's app, then that might be something to consider. And then, get some testers. So whether you have a team, you could bring them all in, or you can bring in external testers to test out this uploaded application. And these top three things, the accounts, having a stable way of uploading your app, stable and consistent, and having your testers do that as soon as you possibly can. So once you begin breaking ground on development, set up your accounts, get it uploaded, get testers on it, even if the app does nothing. Having that will just make the rest of the process easy, and do that often. The next thing you need these are mostly marketing materials, and as you guys have relations with marketing, then yeah, really solid screenshots to show what the app does, your icon, privacy policy, app name, description, URL. Pretty easy to gather that stuff. And then if you have like a login, make sure you have a test account and instructions for the App Store reviewers, and if there's something like multi-factor authentication, find a way to provide them with that one-time password for logging into your app.
I think one thing I can share here, Miles, like this is one of those cases where spending some time actually will help you go faster. Like just by nature, the number of submissions they get, that App Store review process, they are, they're looking to provide a good experience for the users out there. And you can run into a lot of things that you may see as pedantic, but they so spending some of that time to get familiar with what the rules are, what they're looking for, and putting the effort in there. Putting that effort in, maybe taking a couple days to do that will save you on the back end. I've heard definitely a number of stories from, even independent app developers out there that know it, but they spend maybe sometimes weeks and then having phone conversations to try and get their application through for something that seems pretty straightforward, because like one of their screenshots actually was detected to have maybe like copyrighted material as part of it, things like that. And so you run into a number of things there. So spending a little bit of time doing some research on best practices there can really make a difference.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, also add just having an app out that you can get feedback on, it feels good. It getting people using it, trying it out, and then seeing how they react to it helps you make decisions on what is effective for your audience, as well as there's just that positive psychological feedback loop of having what you've worked on used by people. So
yeah, that's a perfect segue to the actual approval process. And this is when you gather all those things I just mentioned, and then you're like, okay, it's time to submit it to the official App Store reviewers. And what they'll do is they'll download the app, they'll try it out, and provide their feedback. And what might happen is, like what Cody said, is they might reject it, and that's for various reasons. They might simply have a question. And so you'll submit for a review, and then you get this email. Your app has been rejected. And you're like, no! So you look at the question, and it might just be a business question. How's this supposed to work? They maybe aren't clear, it maybe isn't clear what the app is supposed to do. So you clarify, and then they approve. Or it might be a policy violation. And so this is where knowing these beforehand could save you hours and weeks of work. So an example I have is that built out an application over the course of months, and through this application, you're able to create an account, and you can log in with that account. And so we were so happy, time to upload the app, get it approved and up on the App Store, until I got that rejection email. And when I read into it, they're saying, okay, this is Apple. So if you're able to create an account through the application, you also need to support deleting that account and clearing the data for user data rights. And that was just something I didn't know about. And so we had to go back and add that functionality, which on a mobile app, that's easy, but you also have to make that change on the back end. So that's what took more of the work than the actual mobile app. So it's important to know those things. Also, if they find a bug that's very obvious, then they'll also reject it, and you'll just do that cycle again and again. So you'll make those changes, resubmit, and then you'll get a nice message that looks like this. And I remember the first time I saw that and it felt very good. All right, yeah, that's everything from me, and kind of walk through picking the right technology, what kind of technologies are there, what are their use cases, what are their pros and cons, talked about what it might actually look like developing, this application. And then once we have that ready, then actually getting it published. So yeah, do you guys have any questions or?
Data. So storage. You kind of talked about, a little bit about that, but just the data behind mobile apps. Like, where is it stored? How's that kind of managed? Like, I didn't know back-end stuff. I'm not as familiar.
Yeah. So this is a slide that we skipped initially because it looks like a lot, but there's a lot more to a mobile app than just what you see. There's a lot of that logic and data that's being stored somewhere else. And that's why it's mobile, because you can take your phone anywhere and retrieve that data and display it. So talk about Facebook. Like, the app itself is not very big, but it's grabbing thousands and thousands and thousands of rows of data from servers. And so that system, that infrastructure can be quite significant.
Yeah, but man, I think like as we're talking about like the dating app, the backend's probably all written, so you might just need to focus on that mobile piece and just find a way to connect it to what's already existing. But if you're building something from the ground up, then yeah, the backend might be a real consideration, and that might be where most of the development of the app actually is, and how to store the data, where you want to store it, and that's an entirely different discussion on with lots more choices on how to do that. And there are ways, like some apps might only be stored on the phone. And we mentioned like Procreate before. I don't know if that's actually like a great example, but there are use cases, maybe like a mobile game without ads or things like that, where everything's kind of stored locally. It doesn't need to talk back home. It can really have that offline experience. But chances are most apps are going to want to be talking to a backend, and they're going to be storing the data. However, the designers of that decide to. So.
Yeah, the mobile app might just be the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Depending on your use case.
Yeah, and then, so assuming that's the case too, then there's the calls to retrieve the data and performance as well. So, yeah, maybe a little something about how that works.
I think to say, it's going to be the same thing with a web page. For the most part, it's not a major concern if a web page exists and it already works for it. Just do it through like the mobile network. There are cases where that might be a concern, where you might target people that are hikers or backpackers, and it'd be like remote places. But it's definitely, maybe Cody, you want to add something there? I would say typically you don't target that or think about that too much when you're designing the application. You're relying on the internet infrastructure layer to kind of handle that, and as working for a company, you don't have to be too concerned about it, especially if you're using like Amazon AWS or Google Cloud or like Microsoft Azure. Like, you're going to be expecting that your connection is going to be good, and not have too much concern about the connection with the mobile app if it's using the internet.
I think just to expand a little bit on what Jeff shared, a couple things there. One is, regardless whether you choose a native application and you're using like Swift and libraries there out of the box, or something like React Native, there's going to be, in this case of making like API requests, there's going to be some library used, some facility kind of built in, and so you've got a kind of a quick way to do that. And the other advantage you get, regardless of that technology choice you have, is once it gets to the phone level, like Apple, Google, etc., they've done some things they've really looked and kind of understood some of those use cases. So whether you're going between cell or maybe a flaky wireless network or vice versa, they handle those things at a lot lower level and figure things out, retry things for you. So one of the things, like back in the original days of web applications and things like that, we had to do a lot of things, whether it's retrying, taking into consideration, intermittent network connections. The phone side and those platform providers have done a really great job of making that pretty robust. I can't actually think of like even having to worry about things like that on the mobile side, even like latency and things like that. For, I would say like 90% of the applications that are out there, those things, it's just, I need to make a request and you know, what the phone does and things like that, take care of making sure that that goes through. One maybe unique scenarios that may have to start thinking about things, I don't know, like the dating app experience if everyone's in this, but where you're requesting larger blocks of data, that's where you have to start thinking about things like, oh, if I'm on a 3G network, things like that. But the platforms kind of provide some facilities to handle those things that are kind of out of the box, so lazy loading and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I think I got working at LinkedIn, so owned by Microsoft, and when we would upload PowerPoints, there's a huge lag, and I was sort of shocked at just how bad the performance was trying to bring up PowerPoints, especially like really heavy ones, through SharePoint. It's like, geez, like this is Microsoft, and they can't get that right.
Yeah. Definitely some scenario, yeah, when you run into cases like that too.
Yeah. But I think with most mobile apps, you're not bringing up, massive PowerPoints.
Exactly, like kind of, Miles' little example there. It is, it's a large number of use cases. Like I have a list of data, and there's some things that you may choose to do. Like, all right, I just want to retrieve like 20 or 50 records, and then if I have like 5,000 records, I'll just retrieve the next 50 as somebody scrolls through. So you've got some facilities, like kind of that infinite scroll list. You don't have to fetch all that data at once either. That helps.
I am thinking of a use case where we've had to make some considerations where, you could take a picture of something and upload it to the app from a mobile phone. And, phones now are great because they take such great pictures, but they're big. So, we had to do things like compress or, reduce the size of the picture before it gets uploaded, for multiple reasons. The main reason is transferring that data to, if they're on a spotty network, then it will take forever or fail. And then also for consideration of like our storage costs. If people are uploading, large photos all the time, then that's data storage in the cloud is relatively cheap, but it's still a consideration that you take in. And if you want to deal with like photos or videos, then you're going to have to think about ways and what's really needed. If you can compress or reduce the size before you upload it to the web, and PowerPoints and things like that are maybe also an issue, but you can't really compress a PowerPoint more or reduce the size of it. So that is a consideration, and you might have to build in some robustness of just saying, hey, this failed to upload, try to connect to Wi-Fi or something like that.
I have a selfish question, because we see entrepreneurs a lot of times, and there's sort of this misconception with apps that they're easy to develop and achieve. When you're an entrepreneur, it seems like something that's super attainable, as opposed to building a brick and mortar store or a whole website. So we see a lot of entrepreneurs come through that have ideas for apps, but as you probably know, there's a laundry list of things that they should probably check on before they decide to go ahead and start developing that app or hire people to develop that app. What is that laundry list? What is something that when someone comes to you guys and says, hey, I've got this idea for an app, what do you kind of run them through to make sure that it's actually suited for commercialization, or intuitively it just makes sense with the way it has to be developed? Because what kind of helps ground people who really just want to jump in and make an app?
So just an anecdote with that before we get to the meat of it, but like as an engineer, setting like expectations with like the business people and how long like a feature will take to develop, there's kind of this rule of do your best guess, then double it again, like, and then add some more days. Software development can be hard, and even the best estimates by professionals in it, like you have to double it and then some to get a good estimation. So I think there's building the app is hard, and then getting the market share for it is also hard. There's a lot of considerations where I think if you're really planning on an app as your main product, you have to do a lot of market research. I think usually the best way to go is getting an MVP out and bootstrapping it from the beginning, or you already have a successful product like a website or something else and you're looking to get into the mobile space. Like truthfully, people don't like installing extra apps on their phone. We were talking about when Andrew was here, like there's really only like those 10, maybe 20 main apps that you use, and to use another app, it's a big ask for a lot of people. So you really have to have a good use case for people to want to use your app.
And execute on that, right? Deliver value.
Yeah, it has to be a better experience or an equal experience than like a website. So that's also rare. I'm sure all of us have experienced, you download this app and it's just like, this is unusable. I have to go on my computer and log into the website to actually do what I want to do because the app is not a good experience. So you really have to think about and you make it a good experience, at least as good as like desktop or web. And I think there's a lot of consideration on how to to market and get people to install and download the app. I guess I'll say maybe not even install. I think a lot of people install apps, but opening it up twice. Like I think we could probably pull up graphs or you could look it up. But like initial installs are one thing, but like returning apps users, like there's this very, very steep drop off where you might have, let's just say like 1 million people download and open your app one time, and then you might only have like 10,000, come back and open it again ever. So like there's really steep drop offs with that kind of stuff.
I think, Jacob, one of the things to really look at is, kind of understand where are you at as a business and what do you need to accomplish, in the next 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. Sometimes building something quick, easy, dirty to get it out there is what's required. And so that's where you may have to make some of those trade-offs and choose not just a technology, but the way you put it together. Like we're going for rapidness and to get it out there because that's key. Other times you may have something, so that may be something like I would think, getting a storefront out there, trying to sell some of your products, like so you make like, honey or eucalyptus, and you have some products in that realm. Want to kind of build a mobile application that somehow does some things and maybe manages some users. That one, you can really get some things out there quickly, get an initial store there, get users out there. But if you were, say, building like a trading application for, for stocks, something like that, you've got to think about a lot of things and really take into account those things from performance, et cetera, all along. And so you need to invest and spend more time. So there's not necessarily a one size fits all. So I think you need to start there and really understand what are your needs, what do you need to do right now, and then be open to, I may need to throw some things away and do it differently 6 months down the road. That's one of the things, like in this entrepreneur journey, like technology is great. You don't have to have the best technology out of the gate. It can cost a lot to build that best architecture. And if you don't need it, you shouldn't spend it. You shouldn't do that. How can you get something out in 3 months that can start generating revenue so you can figure out what's important? I think we've seen from pitch competitions and so forth. I think one that was up here last time, for pitch night, they had an idea and they pivoted to another realm with that product that they learned. So if you invest for 2 years and $10 million to build the best mobile app and architecture, that may not be the right solution. So I think that's one thing. That would be the first thing I'd just ask for people to look at. Then the next one is, what are those key personas? I'm going to go back to the design thinking that we did. I think going through some processes like that, are you connected and understand your customers? And what's the use case for the mobile app? That may be 1 or 2 users that you can really design around. Start with that. Don't try and take care of maybe the 10 personas that use your product. Look for the 1 or 2 that the mobile application is going to make a difference.
Yeah, I kind of want to echo a little bit of like get an MVP out, get testers early, and see what is actually working. Don't spend too much effort up front getting it out. And then I think also like look at the hybrid apps or progressive web apps. And if you're designing a website, it might not be too much more effort to get a mobile app out anyway. There are some considerations. It's not free still. That you have to change the designs of the website to make it mobile friendly. But if your website is already mobile friendly, then it might not be too much to make it a hybrid app and get that on like the App Store, so you have another way to attract users to your product. But yeah, it's a difficult question and really requires a lot of market research to see what the best way of tackling that problem is.
Yeah, thanks for your insights. That gives me a lot more talking points when I meet with entrepreneurs that talk about building an app.
Yeah.
Because normally I just say, well, is the market there? And we kind of focus the conversation on what's the market look like, because they're the ones who are going to be paying you through the app. But that gives me a lot more to consider when having that conversation, to kind of probe and see how much thought they put into just the overall development process.
I may have a bit of a bias because I worked at Facebook for 2 years in product marketing, and everything that we did was you always had sort of a checklist of risks. Like what are some of the risks that might be involved with, let's say, going from a desktop where the device is not mobile, it's in a controlled, safe space, to now you're putting the experience on a mobile device that can be out there, and always kind of from like a kind of a trust, kind of integrity standpoint. I mean, that was like a lens that we always had to kind of look at, because we knew we were going to get press questions, and so kind of as a product marketing manager, I had to work with the product manager, like, okay, what are some ways that this could be abused, or what are the risks here, and kind of prepare for that. So I think that's maybe something too that a lot of entrepreneurs don't think about. That they don't see the positives, but they don't think, well, what could go wrong?
Yeah, I think one of them is, especially like if you've built a very solid and well-regarded web experience, if you don't do that on the mobile side, it can really hurt your brand in that side. And I've run into this a little bit with like some food ordering apps where, if I jumped to their website, it's easy. I can get in, order my sandwich, gets delivered to me. It was super easy. It takes me like 30 seconds with the website. But I get on with the mobile app, and it literally like I can't actually get through and do that. And it turns me away. It's like, man, I'm not actually even going to go to their website now because that experience was there. And they're using technologies. They got things out there quickly, but they didn't think about that's one of the big risks that I see when you have that kind of experience. I think the other one is just how do you, like with your application, understand some of those needs. I think when it comes down to data and like moving it around, there is an expectation more and more that like people are now used to this mobile experience, but it's backed by something in the cloud. So, if I view one thing here or I have some things saved here, I expect to see those maybe on another device, whether it's my iPad, my iPhone, or if I go to the website. And so if you don't think through some of those use cases and have a good story in that realm, that's one where I can see where, hey, wait a minute, I was doing these operations here, this was my cart here, but now I can't even see that now that I happen to be sitting in front of my desktop at work. Those are a couple of the risks that I've run into and I've seen people kind of struggle with a little bit.
I think something else to bring up is you don't build a mobile app and then just leave it there. Like Miles said, you have to continually update it. Apple and Google will deprecate parts of it, and you have to continually update it to keep the experience good. So, you're going to have a developer, at least part-time focused on that mobile experience, and that can increase your overhead significantly. So, they're maintaining this mobile experience now in addition to maybe a web or desktop experience. And, if you're really strapped for cash trying to get a product out, that might not be something that you can handle. And it's hard to put something out like that, have the experience decrease, or remove it like from the App Store. So there's like, might hurt your brand, like Cody was saying, if you deliver a product or you put a product out and don't properly maintain it. And another consideration there.
Shane, thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, you've been a great audience.
Thank you all for your time and doing this, putting this on. It's been great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So our only ask, is you keep your eyes open, look for the next one, share with your friends. Love to get out here and share with more people. So yeah, things will be out here. If you guys definitely if you want the slides or anything, if you want to take a picture, you definitely email us or anything. Happy to
Sounds
share. Yeah.
Probably don't need a mic anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.